Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it is me again, Insane Gorilla, and welcome back to my channel. This is What If Deku. I was going to say Bell, but I just changed my mind to Deku. What if Deku was in Star Wars? Now, if anyone has watched my Mandalorian one, honestly, I hope you have, because I'm hoping to add a bit of a survival, well, not survival, this kind of annoyed and angry kind of faction. Earth is going to be known as Terran, or the humans from Earth are going to be known as the Terrans because, well, obviously Earth and Star Wars, we kind of already have a bit of history there. For starters, there are already humans in the Star Wars universe. Of course, you've got the Jedi and the clone troopers and the Imperial stormtroopers, human civilians with non-human civilians, yada yada yada. We're all over the place. So put Earth in the unknown regions, or near the borders of the unknown regions. It's the only there's only one stable hyperspace lane there. I'm sort of stealing this little idea from Boofire191. So go and check his channel out and watch Earth in Star Wars. He goes into a lot more detail with how technology kind of advanced rapidly. I'm doing the same, but with my own sort of twist to it. So for the original person who did Earth in Star Wars, go watch Boofire191. Great content creator. I haven't seen him do anything for quite some time, so he might have quit YouTube altogether. Or, God bless him, if several years ago COVID took him. If COVID has, may God rest his soul. If it hasn't, then he's most probably found something better to do than YouTube videos. But with that little shout out said and done, we'll get on with the video. Peace. But also, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Now we'll begin. Earth. 2026. I know this is the same year we're in now, but just hear me out, okay? 2026 is a lot different in My Hero Academia. From this time, Earth's technology had already jumped leaps and bounds. From the quirked individuals pushing the quirkless out of everything. 80% of the population have quirks, the other 20% don't. And so there will be the 20% that weren't or didn't have quirks were being pushed out and shunned. It got to the point where the quirkless were getting very rowdy. Quirkless businesses were set up for people without quirks. It got to the point of where militias were made for members of the non-quirked genome. Earth was split. Japan, England, America, somewhere in Europe, and some other places accepted the people without quirks. Other places completely shunned them. And it was on one of these days where things had gone to an absolute boil point. The quirkless were starting to get restless in the cities and towns and countries that completely shunned the quirkless. So the quirkless were getting rowdy, militias were getting more and more violent towards people with quirks. Crime was starting to ramp up in quirked zones. I say zones like they're something meaningful. Areas where high concentrations of quirked people were living and supposedly having the best lives were being targeted. Bombings and brutal attacks were happening for the quirked who were innocent. And they had quirks themselves, yes, but they didn't use them all that often. They had licenses to actually use their quirks in certain fields like construction and fire brigade. But to the quirkless, if you have a quirk, you are nothing but a monster in their eyes. Because the quirked had pushed them out, shoved them to the edges and dregs of society. So they weren't happy. They hated quirked people. And in this time, everybody was going to have more than just quirkless on quirked violence. Up in space, ships were made. Not for war, but for colonization. The Earth government had had enough. The populations that were being brutally oppressed by the quirked were being rounded up, and the government literally said to them, right, your governments who treat you like absolute shit, we are going to be loading you up onto ships. We're going to be sending you to places in our solar system where you can make your own living. You will not have to deal with us. So you can finally relax and have your own society. Now, you're still going to have to pay taxes, but it'll be a global taxation. We will not tax you too much because you want a life where you're feeling more free from us. Now, if we do this, we'll create a new government so our colonies, or the colonies, can still talk to us and we can talk to them. And we'll have this member state where you reach a certain threshold, you can join, but if you don't have that threshold, you can have a representative. The representative can only suggest things, not outright give their own conclusions to things. So this happened. The quirkless on quirked violence didn't stop until those ships were made. Quirkless people left. They set up colonies on Mars, and Mars's two gigantic big ass asteroid moons, Deimos and Phobos. There was another colony somewhere else on another planet, but the atmosphere was way too toxic. Even when they had terraforming equipment to try and terraform the planet just seemed to say, up yours, you're not terraforming me, bitch. And things just didn't go well. So one colony was lost entirely, and everybody really was pissed, including the quirkless, because it was a quirkless ship. So accusations were quickly shot back at Earth for sabotage. Earth immediately put its hands up saying, hey, that's not our fault. We did not do anything. Well, Boy Scouts honor. Even though Boy Scouts doesn't mean jack shit, but hey, you get the message. So with heated debates, Mars and her colonies cut ties. Like, we don't give a fuck. We're cutting ties. Because Earth is clearly out to get the quirkless. Now, not all of the quirkless actually agreed with the whole just blame Earth because it's Earth's problem. Earth did this. some non-quirked individuals teamed up with some quirked individuals who wanted to know what actually happened. Because some of these people actually preferred to have Quirkless around because it made them feel more human and not superior like other countries were starting to act like. So these groups of individuals joined forces after bumping into each other, of course, and they went to where this colony ship went. And this was like over the next couple of years. So Mars had already created a big enough colony, started mining operations, farming, you name it. So with Mars already doing this, they already made a ship to go faster than light, although it's very short distance, and it really does eat up fuel. So when they get there, they just find wreckage over orbit of the designated planet they were going to, and they spend. Hang on, sorry about that. And they spend at least a good 5 to 6 months looking through all of this, looking through all of the wreckage. They find the black box, although it was heavily damaged. And when they listen to the recordings, everything seemed to be going well. Until some sort of gravitational anomaly happened and it tore the ship apart. A message was sent to Mars and Earth begging for help, but it never got sent because somebody on either side, I don't know which side, blocked all transmissions. So it was a clear case of someone was sabotaging both sides to get a war started. And so some people started looking at each other. Now, all these people here know that neither side would have actually done anything. Sure, the Quirkless may have actually done it just to cause problems like this radical faction that was building up in the Quirkless societies to like start overthrowing Earth's government and killing every quirked individual. So it could have been possibly them who caused it. So they went through all the personnel and people who were on this vessel. There was one person that shouldn't have been there. A guy called Kurogiri. A man with a smoke-like quirk. He was shunned because of how odd he looked. The Quirkless actually allowed him in because, for once, they were trying to push their hatred aside. They went through his background. Kurogiri was completely an unknown. He was completely like out there. He nobody even knew who he was. It just popped up with his name. There was even video footage. Then they realized this video footage was not fake. This was from the security team and the. Hang on. Sorry, I got a dog now growling at something. Anyway, so they noticed the security team and the communication team, all of them seemed to be getting on too well. They even noticed certain people taking some letters, some notes, crumpling them up and throwing them in the trash after reading them. All of them looked a bit weird. And a few days before that transmission was sent out, they found a hidden camera in a cargo room. It turned out the security team, the communications officers, the captain, and Kurogiri were all talking about the League of Villains and how this plan from All for One was such a great idea. Infiltrate a quirkless vessel, start making it look like everything was easy going, sabotage everything, and leave. War will start, and the quirked society will be supreme. They will profit from it, and nobody will be the wiser. The weakness of humanity will be shunned, crushed, and allowed the quirkless to be eradicated, while the quirked would remain supreme. Then the action happened. Somebody found out, somebody tried to alert Earth, they were shot, and things were deleted. But the communication was still sent, but someone had blocked it. So nobody would have found out. Just something for help, and that was it. That was all that was heard, because the rest of it was blocked. So they knew that the League of Villains was behind this. All of them nodded. All of them knew what they had to do. They came back to, or they were on their way back to Earth. Somebody popped out of nowhere and destroyed their ship. Like, zero hesitation, they just pop. Hello, goodbye. Boom. And Earth and Mars ended up being in a war for dead on 16 years. I don't know how long World War One or World War Two lasted. I know World War One lasted for a very long time. I think around about 7 years. I know World War Two ended in 1944, I think. I could be completely wrong. If I am wrong, somebody please tell me. But anyway, it lasted a lot longer than World War One and World War Two. 16 years was the waypoint where things really ramped up. Because both started developing weapons that could annihilate cities in a single shot. Railgun technology. Now, instead of having a giant shotgun that just says boom every time it fires, you have a gun that would fire a small, projectile, like a rod or something like that, and fire it at high speed, or kinetic energy and fire it. That could destroy an entire city, town, or small country if it's given enough power. The same could be said for Earth, but Earth made a shielding technology to shield not only the planet from incoming damage, but reflect it. Like, it will bounce off and harmlessly dissipate into space. They had started making ships as well to fly to and fro. The first prototypes on both sides didn't get anywhere. But as soon as their ships were made, think of the Helgas ships and the Vegas ships. So yeah, those kinds of vessels were made. Missiles were flying everywhere. Ships were being destroyed, fighters were going down, crashing and burning when these ships were fully operational and actually were proven designs. Of course, there were other ships being made, ones to be far more powerful. But eventually, when Mars's forces found the remains of an old transport ship that just held nothing but civilians, both quirked and quirkless, and when Earth turned up, there wasn't a battle. In fact, both of them were scanning the debris because they were both sides were actually confused of why that was here. And of course, the League of Villains couldn't allow this to continue. Kurogiri, being Kurogiri, managed to put explosives into 9 of the Earth vessels and made it look like quirkless spies had managed to get aboard and had gone, God is great, boom. So a fight started up again. The same could be said for Mars's ships as well. The same for the quirkless. A quirked individual got aboard and went boom. And for God knows how many years now, it would continue. And when things had finally come ahead, something else happens. Something that even the League of Villains didn't even know was coming. This strange fleet just popped up out of nowhere. One minute they weren't there. Mid-battle, their sensors bleep with so many unknown signatures. The firing stops. Everybody is badly damaged. But everybody sees this fleet just suddenly pop out of nowhere and say, "Oh, goody, your pants are already down. Get ready for a good rimming." No transmissions were sent, just full on attack. The first shot to be fired was not from Earth or Mars, it was from this unknown fleet. This unknown fleet just immediately started racking out shots. The weakest and heavily damaged fleets or ships were the first to be absolutely turned into mince scrap. You thought I was going to say mincemeat, didn't you? Nope, mince scrap. Try and wrap your tongue around that one. So, this fleet just outright mulched both fleets. Now, luckily for Earth and Mars, they already had reserve fleets. So these reserve fleets were already undamaged and ready to box with each other. But luckily, they received messages from both sides saying, "Hold fire, do not shoot at Earth/Mars's fleet. We have an unknown fleet just popped in to cut out both sides. Earth and Mars send transmissions." Okay, we don't know what's going on. And what we just heard was sounding like somebody was screaming about an unknown fleet tearing them apart. Both were saying the same thing, and both realised they're both getting fucked over by this unknown group. So, they say, fuck it. Alliance, we'll sort each other out later. Both sides physically agree. Now, the League of Villains, they had no idea what the hell was going on. Like, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Earth and Mars suddenly caused an alliance. Okay, what the fuck? All of them were saying. Including All for One, by the way. The real man who started the racism against quirkless people. In his eyes, his brother was a fool to try and save the quirkless people. They were foolish, and he was a fool. The quirks were more superior, so he started this whole thing. And now they're in an alliance, he cannot have that. He tells Kurogiri to bomb them all on both sides. Kurogiri refused, as he says that he's actually monitoring their communications, and the two fleets out at the far edges were screaming about unknown contact, shooting them both, and he believes that that threat is very much real. All for One scoffs and says there's no way it's a real deal. Everybody gets a transmission from Earth and, well, everybody on Earth and Mars both start talking to their civilians saying the war between Mars/Earth is over. We have an unknown force entering our solar system. Anyone who has hatred against the quirk/quirkless people, drop it for the time being. We have a much bigger threat. All for One scoffs. Like, he has zero chill for this. He doesn't care. He wants his war between the quirkless and the quirked, so the quirked could reign supreme. But all of his hopes were dashed when video footage started entering everybody's screens of this fleet of unknown ships and unknown designs flying through space, firing at the remains of both fleets, as if to say they can still detect life signs and they want all of it to go. All for One, he doesn't know whether this transmission is fake or real. But Kurogiri is tapped in and he says, no, this is coming straight from that battlefield that has just finished. This is all real. All for One grits his teeth. He tells all of his league to go underground. Do not, and he repeats, do not reveal yourselves. We'll wait for this all to pass, and when it does, the war will continue. I'll make sure of it personally. So the League goes to ground. All villain groups go to ground, following the same motto of, we'll deal with everybody once this is over. The battle begins. Earth and Mars fleets combine. They have their own space stations that kind of act as shipyards too, sort of armed and ready for combat, with significantly powerful shields. Mars had helped sort of retrofit a few of Earth's starships with some smaller railguns. That, well, honestly, that would have hopefully helped. But when the CIS fleet arrives, their forces are, I don't know, I'm going to say since Mars and Earth had lost significant forces, their fleet is around about 50% on each side. But they both have a large array of missile silos to fire into the enemy. But since we all know of point defense systems, it's going to be a little bit hard. But volley after volley after volley of missiles are sent out when the separatist fleet is in range. And when it is in range, the first volley that gets fired is intercepted. But the next volley that comes out is followed by at least 2 more volleys. How they keep on both sides refilling their missile silos so quickly, that's up to you to decide. But these volleys came out in an increasingly fast pace. The first CIS vessel to go down was what was believed to be a cruiser. It wasn't, it was a frigate. But there was quite a lot of these frigates, so nobody could tell. And if you can't tell, yes, that was a Magnificent class frigate that just got shot down. Everybody was happy. This enemy could be beaten. That is until they were met with a wall of laser fire or blaster fire from these ships. Their ships, all ship cannons pointed forwards, and they opened up. Now, you would have said, "Oh, Earth and Mars have shielding, right, on their vessels." Brother, this is the fleet from Earth. Do you see any shielding apart from the space station? No, only the space stations have shielding. Both sides have carriers, 20 carriers for Earth and around about 4 for Mars. So they got plenty of fighters. But again, we're dealing with like thousands upon thousands of vulture droids and hyena bombers and tripods. So taking out a swarm is going to be a pain in the ass. Other than that, two of the Magnificent class frigates fired their main cannons. And, well, this ship right here that I'm zooming in on literally gets cut in half with those 4 shots, blowing it into, well, clean in 2. Other ships, other ships were just being rattled by the main guns. Like the smaller blaster cannons that were just going pew 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 pew. I can't make the sounds properly, and I doubt I ever will. So yeah, those shots, they hurt. Several ships were already reporting ventilations on multiple decks. One ship ended up having an explosion just above its bridge. Its communication systems were completely destroyed, and it had hull breaches on decks 5, 7, 6, 18, 22, and 31. Engines were already going dead because the reactor was hit. It had to be shut down before they had a massive overload, and the reserve power is only enough to keep life support on, and a few of the guns. If they turn them on quickly, fire, turn them off, turn another one on, shoot, off, shoot, on, or on, off, until they can get the reactor stable. There's another carrier that was trying its best to provide covering fire for all of its vessels that were trying to shoot out to join the freaking space battle. But the Vulture droids all either swarmed it, the hyena bombers bombed it, it was heavily damaged, but still launching fighters, until the Vulture droids decided that they're going to go slamming into the hangars. Think of what Admiral Yularen did have happened to him when Anakin and Ahsoka rescued Grotta, or Rotta, or whatever he was called by Ahsoka, Stinky, I think, Jabba the Hutt's son, over Teth. So think of that, but from multiple angles. And those explosions ripped through the ship until the bridge itself went off in a massive kaboom. So that went down. Several frigates were torn apart by the Vulture droids alone, all firing their lasers and just tearing the ship apart. Earth and Mars ships were just flying around, like fighter craft were just flying around, shooting at these flying rust buckets. Destroying a lot in the process, don't get me wrong, they were doing their best to try and destroy as many of these flying enemy space fighters as they could. But like I said, there's swarms of them. They were literally being swarmed, and they couldn't do jack shit. When a fighter squadron dealt with a few hundred droids, they all stuck together, only to have 2 swarms of fighters just appear in front and behind and just shred them to pieces before just simultaneously skimming past each other. When a Terran and Mars, or Mars and Earth fighter ships actually combined firepower and dealt with a large swarm of fighters and bombers, the tripods just came along and just ripped them all to shreds. Mars and Earth, both of their captains looked at each other through the glass of their own vessels and they just nodded. Like they just said, fuck this. All of the ships turned and just went pop. They jumped, leaving Earth to fend for itself. And that goes for Mars as well. They didn't even turn up at Mars. They just gave it one sentence. We will be back. We don't know when, but we will be back. And that was it. Earth and Mars cursed their fleets to the moon and back because they were not happy. Earth was basically clenching its asshole, considering they're going to be the first ones to get the throbbing hot member of this invading faction, and Mars was just hoping that their railguns would somehow manage to punch through their shielding and take down a few ships. Yeah, none of them really have any optimism about surviving. They just put their differences aside and says, well, it was nice bloody working with you for a while, and sod's law, I think we're all gonna fucking die. Earth had nothing to say about that one. They just went, ha ha, and just said, well, if we're gonna die, peace. The Quirkless just said, you're coming to us at the wrong time for that, but yeah, I think it's time we just bury the hatchet and accept that we're all gonna fucking die. Both leaders said it was an honor fighting alongside you. Even though none of them were fighting alongside each other, like at all. Both leaders were on Mars and Earth, respectively. Yeah. Then came the invasions. Mars and Earth both thought that they were going to be simultaneously hit. They were right. The fleet split itself. One fleet stayed over Earth, the other went to Mars. And within 24 hours, Mars had its own defences overrun, decimated and destroyed. In space, that is. And they sent their landing ships. Now, Mars had already got ready to defend itself. They set up defense, anti-aircraft guns, and, pardon my French, big fuck-off railguns. If you don't know what I mean, let me show you. If you remember this from Titanfall, the first game, then you are correct. This was one of their first FU anti-orbital defense guns on the planet. It drained power like a truck that was leaking petrol or gas or whatever. I think lorries and trucks run on petrol as well. I'm not 100% sure. Or in the Americans, oil. Somehow I have a feeling that you guys also run on gas as well, or petrol as well. I have a feeling. But anyway, this wasn't the only one. There was around about 3 of them. Both of them, all 3 suck energy like, again, a bloody semi-truck, or several hundred semi-trucks all at once, but at least the power was strong enough to actually do some real significant damage. But that wasn't the only ones. There were also some mid-orbital defense cannons. These were around about 20 to 80 strong, around some cannons and also around some cities. So there was either 20 or 80 around the orbital cannons, several more around the cities, but they weren't as numerous around the cities. These things do not require that much power. They are a bit like a sports car that doesn't know how to take energy out without overheating. So they could keep on going for forever, really. But other than that, Mars still knows that they're kind of their buttocks is going to be rather sore. So, like I said, Mars is already clenching its butthole, knowing that it's going to get royally screwed over. Now, when the CIS ships start landing, the anti-aircraft guns were already firing. From missiles to short-range railguns that were designed to hit transport ships. And Mars actually succeeded for a lot of things. With its defences, it actually knocked out quite a lot of the CIS transport ships, from shooting off a wing, forcing it to collide into something else and blow up, to hitting it somehow in its reactor core, making it literally implode. From those ships, their debris scattered, so nothing could really be feasibly done. And with every one of those ships that was taken out, Mars cheered. They got their own weapons, automatic assault rifles, bunkers. I'm actually going to change this image in a bit. And all this and that and the other. They got bunkers, trenches. They were ready for when the first CIS vessel landed. I know this is the Death Corps of Krieg versus Tyranids, but I think this is also something very fitting, considering that the Separatists also use wave tactics, like huge wave tactics. Think of Felucia, where Ahsoka got basically punished and left in the Jedi Temple so she could study. So yeah, the droids have no problem using gigantic wave tactics, like the Tyranids. And so, with that being said, when the first droid transport landed, it opened its doors and transports came out. They stopped on the edges of firing lines, although the artillery from the human side could still fire over and hit. The artillery didn't really do that much in the way of damage. Just like slightly shook up the circuitry and all that. That was it. When those doors open, the transports lower the droid racks, and those droids started being put down. They all got up, despite artillery hitting them, grabbing their blaster rifles, turning towards the lines of the human, or the Terrans, and marching. Think of the droid march from Naboo. All the B-1 battle droids were marching. B-2s as well. These were like the newer models that were made specifically to fight in the upcoming Clone Wars. That was planned by both Palpatine and Dooku. So with this battle, the B2 super battle droids were gonna like be put through their paces in an actual fight. Because the Trade Federation learned from the Battle of Naboo. So with another corporation, they created the B2 super battle droid. And so, with this happening, the droids started opening up. Like, as soon as they knew they were in range to start firing, the B1s and B2s started firing. Now, just Remember, they're not actually Kriegsmen, they are literally just humans with body armor and helmets. Think of modern day human society now, just with a slightly bit more of an advanced rifle and all that. It's still in the same model, just slightly more advanced. So, yeah, they just started firing. The Terrans of Mars fire into the droid lines. Machine gun nests basically go rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat, like short bursts, but these bursts were always rapid, like rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat. And these bunkers had at least 2 machine guns in both. Hell, on top there's another set of machine guns with rocket launchers next to them. So they'd always shout fire in a hole, backblast cleared, they'll have their heads patted to show that they're clear, boom, boom. Missiles would be fired. Now, you would say, wouldn't they have been better aimed at the vehicles? Yes, but the vehicles haven't turned up yet. So, 2 explosions from rocket launchers being fired into the lines, boom, droid body parts everywhere. Even the B-2 battle droids actually were destroyed. Given a direct hit, they would literally been blown apart. So these gun lines were just firing, non-stop fire, fire, fire. The front wave of B1s went down, followed by the next wave. Sometimes the next waves behind them were already getting taken down due to the machine gun nests. And also the artillery was being fired into them as well, so they were quickly being annihilated. And when they finally shot down the last battle droid, they watched as the transport ship or transport carriers lifted up their racks, had their racks extend back into them. They reverse. Now, Terrans aren't stupid. I will admit, yes, humanity does have its times where it is completely stupid. But this is not one of those times. This time, Earth was less than stupid. They were very, very much on the ball. Along with Mars, I should have mentioned, were very much on the ball. Unknowingly to Mars and Earth, both were going through the same problem. They've already defeated the first wave, although Earth was in a lot more of a significant disadvantage, because one, their shielding was up, but somehow these ships just put on the fire until their shield just failed from overheating. So they didn't have a chance to even put up any anti-aircraft defenses. And so Earth was royally having its cheeks pulled open and being railed. Yeah. So with Earth being railed, Mars is less being railed and more along the lines of actually having to use tactics to try and get around their defenses. Sure, the wave tactic works, and it works pretty well. I mean, just look at the clones. Wave tactics, like huge wave tactics, often do overwhelm clone forces. That's if you're not a named character in a Pacific Legion. Looking at you, 501st and 212. So yeah, with that pretty much been pointed out, so other than all that, when when the Terrans of Mars think that they are relatively safe because they've basically been watching the fireworks as droid transport ships virtually get shot out of the sky. And their anti-aircraft guns are firing so many missiles up into the air that it's Steel Rain all over again. I mean, Operation Steel Rain, I believe that's a World War II operation, I believe. I could be 100% wrong. But with all that said and done, the Terrans started hoarding, the Mars Terrans start gathering up the droid parts. And they got some damaged and not so damaged blasters. Now, of course, like anybody who wants to know how technology works and want to know how to destroy it better, the Terrans from Mars do just that. They start tinkering. They pull everything apart, and they find out that the B-1 battle droids are basically as dumb as rocks. They need to basically follow the commands from a control ship somewhere, or control station, or a post where a control node could be put. It's relatively... it's a bit mid for them. They really don't know what to do or what they're truly looking for. They just assume this to be the case. And they find out that the B-2 super battle droids are a little bit more, well, not smarter, but a bit more intelligent. They actually can use specific firing patterns, like firing a rocket out of their wrists, which even has Mars engineers like scratching their heads of how the hell that even is possible. But again, this is some futuristic tech that they didn't even have. So more and more years would pass. The battles would continue. But Mars is starting to edge up to, we know what we're doing now, we can kick your ass. Kinds of levels of badass. They have new tech now. Okay, I couldn't find out what specific armor type it is, but let's just say it's the newest model of armor, along with new types of weapons that were formed from generally figuring out what kind of makes the droids run and operate and how they tick. So new weapons were made, such as new folding guns. Yes, I'm ripping off Mass Effect, but Mass Effect is one of my childhood games that I played when I was young. Yes, I'm saying young as if I am older than 50. I am 27, coming up to 28 this year. I am not that old just yet. I'm still in my prime. Or nearly at the end of my prime. Anyway, with that being said, this new armor, it was field tested by pretty much a squad at first. This squad was given the armor, and basically they were told, okay, we really do care about your lives, but we need to field test this in an active combat zone. So go out there, find the droids, shoot them, and if you die in the process, we know that this armor does not work, and you will be remembered as the ones who sacrificed their own lives for the good of humanity. These soldiers, they cringed underneath their new helmets. They were really, really, really not looking forward to this. But they went, and they looked up, They saw more explosions, so more ships were coming down, and, well, some more of their big guns ripped another ship apart. But now the droid ships were targeting those Pacific cannons. And they were sending fighter craft to try and block their shots. But other than that, they came across the first CIS, or the droid patrols. They raised their rifles, and if you know how the Mass Effect sound goes for the primary assault rifle you were given in Mass Effect at the beginning of Mass Effect 3, so it's that kind of sound. So it's just pow, 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 pow. With those gunshots going off, some droids hit them in the right places, they go down in one hit. And the B1s were easy targets. Hit them in the center mass, they're going down anyway. Hit them in the arm, they're going to be losing their arm, but they'll still be able to fire their rifle from one hand, given certain circumstances, such as that one droid we all know from when Plo Koon engaged General Grievous' ship and a droid got his arm shot and he just used his other arm to fire before dying. Hit him in the head, they're going down. Center mass, they're going down. Legs, they're going to go down, but they'll still somehow manage to fire. You just need to double tap them again. B2s, on the other hand, they're lucky. There was only one. But it fired its rocket. It hit the ground instead of one of the troopers, and he went flying. He rolled after landing pretty badly on his side, but he got up and just all of them fired their new rifles into this B1 battle droid. It took a whole clip from all of them just to take it down because they had to aim for the joints. But most of the joints were still pretty heavily protected by the armor when the droid moved. So the shots either went wide, hit but didn't do anything, or hit the armor. They also had to avoid its wrist-mounted blaster cannon. Like literally, the gun itself was implanted in the thing's wrist, and it could power shot all of them. And when the B2 finally comes crashing down, they all had zero shields. They only had primitive shield generators that could only protect a bit of their bodies. So some of them did limp back with wounds. But once it was pretty much confirmed that it's the personal shield pack, that is going to be the problem that holds everybody down, it was still a huge success. It gives a bit more protection. The HUD pretty much blocks out any, well, dust and debris that would get into the eyes. So the armor was standardized, became the new standard. It was Onyx black and grey, but that's because they didn't want their troops to stand out like sore thumbs. They had also come up with a new ship design, but with that fleet up in the air still, it's really not going to be anything possible to, you know, take it out. But they did come up with a gunship design. But that was currently still in the drawing phases. It was approved, but they needed to draw on how they were going to power the damn thing. So it's just at the drawing board, coming up with the power design first. It was still going good. Earth, on the other hand, it hadn't come up with any armor just yet because they were struggling to hold on to ground. Because, one, they were starting to get their shit together. They already started putting AA guns, rocket pods, you name it, down in areas that they want secured, such as farmlands, cities. They needed food. They also needed a lot, and I mean a lot of time. The Quirks were complete and utter fucking garbage because they had no idea how to fight this many battle droids. 98% of the population on Earth were pretty much pushed into bunkers as every civilian, man and woman, apart from the elderly and the too young, were virtually pushed into service. They were given pistols and rifles. Lady Nagant, yes, that Lady Nagant, the one that the Hero Commission in Japan used to get rid of high political targets and kill even children, she was brought out of Tartarus prison, along with all of the prisoners, and they were told, right, you lot, front lines. If you want to earn your freedom, you will help us defend Earth. Sure, most of these people would much rather kiss the devil's feet than serve in the military. But they have also been seeing the devastation. And they're also kind of like saying, you know what? If it's human extinction, I'd much rather go down swinging. So 9 times out of 10, they would just go to the front lines. Others would just stay in their cells and just say, "Kiss my ass," and they'll just end up getting shot. Like, you're not gonna work for your freedom? Okay then. Brutal, yes, but Earth is really, really in the shitter. It really, really, really is struggling. Mars, Mars isn't. Mars is fucking going. Mars is boxing. Like, a well trained boxer versus a droid who really doesn't know how to box and its body is fragile. Mars is pretty much giving it the 1-2 uppercuts. Like, 1-2 to the face, then uppercut its underlining head. Mars is Mars is truly going at it. Mars is causing the CIS no end of trouble. And speaking of Mars, Mars fires one more round from its massive cannons, and it rips through a Lucahulk battleship. And that battleship turned out to be the command and control ship for the droids on the ground. Of Mars, that is. And when Mars sees this, that all the droids and their vehicles that they are now seeing turning up just suddenly stopped moving. Mars quickly gained the vehicles and they were shocked. The droids had literally shut down. And when they see the big donut looking thing go boom properly, they realize that was the ship that was controlling these robots. So they pulled all the robots out of their vehicles, scrapped them, quickly put them to a smelter, and smelted them all down. They kept their vehicles. They had to teach people how to drive the damn things because nobody knew how to drive. Like, this is all alien tech to them. But taking it all apart, they realized that there's an actual language. Erebish, or Erebash, or whatever it's called in the Star Wars universe. So there's clearly an intelligent species out there who made these things. Huzzah, huzzah, huzzah! We have an idea of who's out there. Technically, nobody knows, but hey, fuck it. They just have a feeling that there's an intelligent race out there that made these, well, droids. And after 20 years of non-stop fighting these droids, something happens. Mars had literally destroyed the final remains of the CIS ships upstairs. They started building vessels that carry supplies and everything out into space to begin construction. Of what, you may ask? As I was saying, they started taking stuff into space. And they started construction on a space station. Now this space station began, and honestly this space station was ambitious. But they also managed to make a few new ships, smelter ships, so they could just scrap and salvage all of the spaceships from the CIS fleet that hasn't plummeted to the ground. They can salvage it all up in space and just have the raw materials there. And with the amount of people coming up, within a couple of months, I'm going to say around about 6 months, there was a reactor, a huge living quarters for everybody, a cafeteria. Well, the reactor first, then it was the crew quarters, then so they didn't have to carry all the food up in droves at a time. They had the cafeteria with storage set up soon after, and then outwardly started growing the space station until it was mostly complete. They just had this massive spinning core in the center of it for some odd reason. Whoever designed it and got this past, ethics and general people who actually know that having a giant spinning disc in the center of a ship of a space station really is not a good idea. But it somehow got passed. Apparently, according to the one who designed it, it was meant to act as some sort of a cooling system for the reactor, which nobody knew if that was actually what it was actually designed for. Only the architect knows. And he says it was, so who are they to argue? But anyway, with that being all said and done, after the crew quarters and all that was done, and of course design the ship, space station was still being built, they moved on to more pressing matters, building up a navy again. Now they don't know if Earth is fully taken over yet, or is still hanging on, either by the clutches of its teeth and ass being squeezed so hard it can make diamonds. But they'd start construction, just ignore the ship already being built, on construction yards. When they started, they made not one, but around about 5 of these. And they melted down every last vulture droid, vulture bomber, or hyena bomber and tripod, including the biggest ships. Well, most of the bigger ships were used for the space station, but hey, there was quite a lot of them left to use on the, shipyards. And they had enough left over, including all of the stuff that landed on the planet, to be brought up. They could start creating ships. And they did. Little did they know, however, that the navy that left them, God knows how many years ago now, was also along the same path, somehow, but also bringing back some very unique individuals. And after at least 19 months, so that's a year and 9 months, at least this many ships were made. Now, when I said 5 more shipyards were made, I generally mean 5 were made, but another 5 were made as well. It turns out that they had a lot of stuff to make a lot more shipyards. So they made a lot more, and they pushed out ships as well. They had crews also ready to man them, considering that the human population was still growing downstairs. And they were all training to be engineers, soldiers, and pilots. And with all these ships, they thought, yeah, if there's any more ships over Earth, we can take them. And they went flying off into space. Earth, on the other hand, was still under heavy assault. They were barely holding on to Pacific areas. Japan, America, England, Russia, a few of the stronger nations were just holding out. There are a few pockets of resistance in the lower, like in Europe, Asia, and all that. There are still some pockets of resistance. They're just not holding out for much longer. Things had gone from bad to worst. More and more of these transport ships were just unloading droids by the bucket loads. You may think, oh, bucket loads isn't that much. You do realize this is a droid army. A bucket load means transports. A transport load a day. So yeah, these droids were endless. And Earth was not holding on. Everybody was running low on food, everybody was running low on morale and hope. The CIS fleet had completely surrounded the planet, like it was a blockade. But when on Earth specifically was out of hope, until they heard a transmission calling all 3 channels, on Earth. Someone respond. The last vestiges of humanity's Earth government. Someone just said, this is Earth's last remaining members of government. Who is this? This person just simply smugly said, well, it's your friendly neighborhood Mars fleet calling in to ask if you guys need a bit of an assistance. When everybody heard Mars lives. Mars is here to help. You could physically hear and feel the relief and hear the sighs coming out of everybody's lips and the smiles somebody had. Somebody who was on the other end just simply said, Mars has got a fleet. I don't know how you guys have survived so long. I honestly don't know, but I don't care. It is actually super sweet to hear some other humans out there. Thank God that you're alive. We don't know how many ships you've got out there, but if you can help us, please. We are suffering out here. Or suffering down here. The guy on the other end said, well, that's the thing. We got around about 19 ships. Or 10 ships. Sorry, not 19. 10 ships. All with railguns. And some not so much railgun designs. But honestly, I think you would like our little presents. Earth represent, well, Earth government members just look at each other like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Yeah, just shoot the ships, okay? We'll give you coordinates to where the heaviest fighting is. If you've got anything that could help out, please, please send it. The government on Earth sends the message. Mars Mars personnel just look at each other like, boy. Like, they start rubbing their hands together. They see the vulture droids starting to swarm at them. So their anti-aircraft defenses open up. Only 10 ships, but the firepower was enough to punch a hole clean through the droids. Starfighter screen. Hold on, Earth. Mars is bringing the mother load. We're gonna punch a hole clean through these ships. And Mars does. Their ships fire their main cannons. Their main cannons rip through the fighter swarm and detonate in a few of the Lucahulk battleships. These weren't the droid control ships. Oh no, they were just ordinary battleships or battle carriers, whatever you want to call them. So they were already going down because their shots hit straight smack bang in the center of the reactor. So they were going up in big booms. And all around Earth, when they received that message, they had stuff looking into the sky. And when they clocked two big explosions, they saw these ships and strange little transport ships shooting down at neck-breaking speeds. All human forces, prepare for human reinforcements. They would hear on on all channels. The humans of Earth, all the quirked ones that is, just got down on their knees. They weren't praying, they were just crying. They were happy. They were finally getting reinforcements. The resistant members who were resisting just hoped and prayed they would be the first ones to get reinforcements. The first one was in India. Several transport ships shot at several droid groups, blowing them up. When the India resistance cells see this, they scream and cheer and start pumping their fists up into the air. Someone with a light-based quirk starts shining, indicating where some people are. These transport ships land. These soldiers jump off and start creating barriers and firing at the droids that start making them to advance. These people just excitingly helped out. The ones with strength enhancing quirks flip over old vehicles, put them down for cover. They shout, "Follow us!" And they start pushing these old broken vehicles down the road. The soldiers get behind them and start firing past the open cracks. Everybody just started pushing. India was secured in a week. Like literally, in a week, India was secured. The next was somewhere in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia. I don't know my countries that well, okay? So forgive me. In Japan, anyway, like I was saying, Southeast Asia was taken after 3 months. Then it was the rest of Asia. Japan was next. Japan still held out strong. So a little bit of reinforcements, Japan pushed the CIS out. And then they received news that they never thought they would hear. More bleeps of signatures of ships jumping into the system. All they heard was this: calling all humanoid channels that could hear my voice. This is Admiral Davian Hackett, or Admiral Hackett. I don't think I know his true, his full name, so it's just Admiral Hackett. We are here. We have returned after 48 years of being in hiding. We have returned. We are your sons, we are your daughters. From both factions, we are here. We have returned. We will not allow our race to die in the dark. For Earth, for the Alliance, for freedom. Any Earth forces and on Mars, fight. Do not surrender. We are here. And the ships only grew from 5 to 10 to 20 to 30. There's now around about 50 ships, including the 10 from Mars, which is 60. They started firing their main cannons. Their fighters clashed with the swarms of the Vulture droids from the CIS. Now, doesn't mean that there weren't casualties on the human side. When the Mars fleet smashed back out of the CIS blockade and joined the fleet and turned around, this fleet clashed with the Separatist fleet. Blaster fire and, cannon fire would be smashing into each other. Railguns would be fired. They would either skim or crash into the CIS warships. Some ships would be blown up from underneath but still remain functional. Others would be torn in two. Or others would just have massive holes punched into them and would just become drifting hulks. Due to either the systems being shut down or things just completely going offline from the explosive impact. The Lucrehulk battleships would have their shields pumped up to maximum because they've got around about 3 shield generators. So all 3 generators would be pumped to the maximum and the core would be pumping out a lot of power. And the guns would be going on full blast. So the Terran ships would be torn apart, but with some heavy-duty firepower from the railguns, the shielding would start flickering, then dying. And with 3 rounds hitting the core, the droid battleship would just blow up from its center. The center would just blow up, and, well, as the saying goes, she's done. The battle would be fierce, harsh, and unrelenting. But down on the ground, more and more ships would be landing with more and more troops, including some very new gunships. These were also the exact same models that Mars was thinking of making. And when these ships turn up, Mars just said, well, I guess we can make those. These ships flew around, spraying every CIS defensive position that was heavily defended. The CIS had their own anti-aircraft defense turrets. So of course they were going to get shot down too, but they were very fast and nimble. So once the cannons were aiming up, these gunships swiftly started moving erratically to avoid getting hit. They were more swift than they were basically given credit for. Even transport ships were flying in low to give support. They could hover, but they couldn't move as fast as their gunship counterparts. So, one good cannon shot, and they would be a ball of fire smashing into the ground. On the ground, CIS forces would be rapidly torn apart. Their vehicles would end up having missiles impact them, destroying them, and turning them to scrap. And after God knows how many more months of fighting on all fronts, the CIS control ship was destroyed. It was turned to scrap metal over the polar caps, and all droid remaining forces shut down as the command and control ship was destroyed. Earth, Mars, and their long lost brothers and sisters cheer in victory. And when Earth's political situation comes out to play, Mars and Earth both look at the runaways and ask them where the living have they been. Admiral Hackett comes down personally. He meets Earth's and Mars's governments all at once. He stands in the middle of a courtroom with the governments of Earth and Mars looking at him with complete and righteous anger. They had not forgotten what his group did to them at their most desperate hour. Admiral Hackett doesn't come out with any excuses. He doesn't come out with any bullshit. He tells them straight. The ones who came before him fled because they were scared that all of humanity was be wiped out in this very battle. In that very battle. They left and created several colonies. They dropped everything. Their prejudices, everything. And within 2 generations, they had stopped being quirked. Because none of them saw the use for having quirks anymore. Everybody was shocked. In 2 generations, quirks stopped being a thing. So, Earth asked, why were you no longer using your quirks? Is what makes you you and unique. Admiral Hackett just looked and said, because it was bullshit. We have colonies called Cadia and Reach. Yes, Warhammer 40k and Halo. Both should be something close to our hearts. For anyone who played Halo Reach, the best Halo campaign, and if you've read up on the lore about how Reach fell, then that should hit you in the heart. Because Reach stands. And Warhammer 40k fans, Abaddon the Despoiler threw one hell of a temper tantrum just to destroy Cadia. He threw a giant bloody black stone fortress at the planet. Just to get a win. Smack bang loser for Abaddon. Because he was losing. Cry me a river about how Abaddon was a master tactician. So was Horus. Enough about me ribbing on Abaddon the Spoiler and Horus Lupercal. But anyway, moving on. They weren't the only colonies as well. They were just two of the bigger ones. Hell, they were big enough to be classed as planets that were renowned for one, Reach for its beauty, and Cadia was renowned for being a war world. A world that pretty much revolved around training soldiers for war. So, yeah, with that being said and done, they got the names for the other colonies, which weren't really that big. Like, there was Odysseus colony, Extalo colony, and Refara colony, all in the same system. But they were more along the lines of food and factory worlds. Two of them were completely food worlds, while the last one was literally literally a factory world. No Adeptus Mechanicus here, thank you very much. It was just basically several gigantic factories working simultaneously together. They take up at least half of a continent each, and the rest is just food production. Well, mining and food production. So there was still food for the factory workers and materials being pumped into the factories to create stuff. Don't like it? Sorry. That's just how I'm rolling with things. So, with all that being said and done, they generally have no real problems now with Hackett. He pretty much said that all that he needed to be said. He even had a lie detector placed on him, and he was telling no lie. So they asked Hackett if he would like to be an admiral of a true fleet. Hackett just smiles and says he would be more than honored. And Earth then said, "You called us the Alliance, so we're keeping that name too. For here on out, Earth and Mars and the other colonies are not divided. We are the Alliance." Everybody rejoiced. Then the League of Villains, after, well, All for One pretty much still alive somehow, rebuilt all of his league, started causing problems. And this was when one of the newer cities was built. New Alexander. Or, well, New Eden, to be precise. Now, I'm not talking about Eden Prime, I'm just talking about a city that was called Eden, or New Eden, for a new era. This city took years to build. But it didn't mean that other cities were not being built either. And in New Eden, Izuku Midoriya was born, son of Hisashi Midoriya and Inko Midoriya. He was considered their light, as both of his parents came from two different places. Hisashi came from Mars, Inko came from Reach. So both of them were different. Both of them weren't people with quirks. So Izuku was loved by both. But something strange happened. Izuku had this strange purple aura around his fists when he was mad. Scientists called this a phenomenon. Maybe it was a quirk activation. Maybe it was something different. Scientists and doctors looked at Deku. He didn't have that extra joint in his pinky toe, So where was this power coming from? They then, one of the scientists then found something odd. There was an element in Deku's blood system, and he called it Element Zero because he really couldn't think of anything else properly to call it, so he called it Element Zero for biotics. He called it biotic power because what else was he going to try and call it? It stumped the science and the science community so hard they just came up with a brain fart of an idea and just ran with it. They don't know how it operates, how it comes along. They just know when something purple starts emanating from the wrists or from the body in general, it could be any sort of power from Element Zero, or a biotic power that just comes along. And so, it just happens. Deku was the first biotic of his, of humankind in general. When he was 7, he was put in a training facility so people could study his biotic power, study it, and learn on how to teach other people it. So they put him through rigorous tests on how to use his biotics safely. They find out that he can do several things. He can throw a biotic bomb that can make people float so it's easier for people to hit them. He can suddenly grab hold of something with both hands and yeet himself, or stand still, think about moving at super speed towards a specific target. He can just suddenly go there, boom, with a punch, and he can send whatever was there flying. And he can also put up one hell of a fight. When he clenches his fists, his biotic powers glow around his fists. So when he punches, there's a shockwave, and possibly multiple people will go flying. So he was generally being taught on how to do that. And as he gets older and older, he actually applies to be in the Alliance military. The Alliance had, by this time, grown in size, with more colonies being set up, them being part of the Alliance altogether. A lot of things were dropped. There was a central government, Earth, where all of the government members go. There was an academy called Grissom Academy that flies, so a lot of people could go there. Hell, there were several actually academies. Grissom Academy was actually the oldest and more successful out of the lot, which is technically where Izuku's main tests and instructions on how to control biotic powers was given. It was mainly meant for students with mental and physical adaptations of biotic powers, or they are just big brained. And very big brained with the engineering teams too. There are numerous academies for just regular foot soldiers who are just called Alliance Marines. And Deku, he is considered a prodigy, but he really, really tones down arrogance. Like, he is very, very humble. Just like he is in canon My Hero Academia, he is very humble. He refuses to have anybody call him the genius or the prodigy of his time. He really, really doesn't like it. He finds it cringe. He does not like it. He finds it, like I said, cringe. He finds it disturbing. He also finds it very, very overwhelming. You may say, oh, he's just being a big chicken. And, well, yeah, he could be classified as a big ass chicken, but he generally just does not want to be called a genius or this person of significant political fervor. He just wants to be this ordinary boy who works in the Alliance military. He'll become a legend in his own right, not through his being of the first biotic. When Izuku is 16, there have already been cases of biotic flare-ups in Pacific areas, from Reach, Cadia, the colonies around both Reach and Cadia, Earth, Mars, and several other of their colonies. So biotics were becoming more of a thing. Quirks were still around, of course, but there was a lot more biotics popping up than quirks. Quirks were still very popular on Earth, and hell, Earth was still having more and more population members of Earth having quirks. Those who don't have quirks are no longer shunned. So that's good, considering it was the quirkless who did most of the heavy lifting and did most of the fighting and helped Earth in its dire needs. They could have just left Earth to die, but they didn't. So the quirk admitted that they were wrong, and they actually started patching up, well, badly burned individuals, mainly the ones who grandparents suffered at the hands of quirk supremacists. But like I said, back to All for One. When All for One started his revolution with his quirked individuals who believed firmly in what All for One was saying, the Alliance cracked down on him. Like Earth and all of the other Alliance member states came to Earth. There was a huge, and I mean huge, manhunt for All for One. He created his Nomus to fight off against the Alliance military. The Nomus did incredible damage, and Izuku was part of this fight. He faced off against a high-end Nomu who was specifically made to defeat people with quirks, so having someone who uses quite literally the energy of the void to crush him and turn him into such fine dust that he couldn't regenerate was a huge game changer after Izuku received one hell of a beating. And once All for One tried to take his biotic quirk, because All for One believed it to be a quirk, he never got it. And Izuku, along with this new user of All for One, of One for All, of OFA, him and this chick beat All for One's ass so hard that AFO ceased to exist. Shigaraki was dead, so he had no successor. And Eri, well, unfortunately for Eri, she never got away from, well, the accuser, so she didn't survive. Unfortunately, rip Eri. But not to worry, there's a new Eri somewhere. Just need to put her in properly. So with all that being said, done, the accuser was next. After All for One was defeated, the accuser started causing problems. With quirk erasing bullets that they had from Eri, although these quirk erasing bullets did jack shit to the ones who had biotic powers. They just made them feel funny, and that was it. So after the Yakuza were wiped out, all criminal activity started to really quickly decline. It's not just these small gangs that cause problems these days. Nobody else. Izuku? Well, Izuku was pretty much walking around, well, New Eden. Considering he's off duty, he pretty much uses his biotic power to help people, such as gripping a runaway cat who was trying to climb up scaffolding. He grips it, brings it down to the little girl who was calling for her little kitty. She hugs it and thanks Deku himself. Security guard, well, police were patting down someone who was possibly carrying drugs. Deku walked past. Police were everywhere now. Ordinary Alliance PDF. So, they're just walking around, doing what police usually should do. Checking for contraband, sending people to prison, yada yada yada. Izuku saw his mother, who ran a very successful cafe. She smiles, waves at him. Izuku smiles and walks in. His dad was there. His dad was a successful businessman. He was a trader slash pioneering expert. And he was actually getting ready to go on a major voyage beyond Alliance-controlled territory, hoping to find some people to trade with out there who aren't human. Because after the war, everybody knew about these droids and having somebody who created them out there in the void somewhere. They just needed to find them. Now, of course, Earth was looking for a bit of payback. Anybody who made those bucket of bolts to fight Earth really needs a lesson in humility. So Hisashi was getting ready for his maiden voyage, and he was as giddy as a schoolgirl. He was really excited. Once he told his son, Izuku just pats his dad on the shoulder, hugs him, and tells him good luck. Hisashi just smiles and says, "You bet it, little buddy. I'll be the best damn trader out there." He just smiles and gives that cheesy grin, kisses his wife on the lips, making Izuku roll his eyes. As he then feels a small tug on his trouser leg, he looks down and smiles. His 6-year-old sister, born, well, quite some time after he entered Gryphon Academy, so he barely stood enough, well, made enough time for her. But over several years, he got to know her, and she looked up to him like she was looking at a hero. Plus, it kind of helps that when she got bullied at school because, well, she was, well, Izumi, she was shy and very timid, Izuku turned up. And when I mean he turned up, I mean he strolled in like he owned the place. Biotic power slowly showing itself, glowing over his skin. All the kids, of course, knew that Deku was the first biotic, and he was incredibly powerful and dangerous. Izuku didn't threaten them. He didn't say anything horrible or nasty to get the point across. He just said, "Could you please stop bullying my sister? I find that very rude. You wouldn't like it if someone started bullying you." The bullies ran off after agreeing to stop doing it. Izumi hugged her brother and just cried. He was so calm and gentle about telling them off. And, well, that was that. She watched him when he faced All for One. She watched him and that girl fight the bad man and win against the bad man. And, well, that's the last she ever saw of that girl. She thought that her brother and that girl were getting together by the way that they were so close. Not understanding that those two had nothing to do with each other. They just fought together just to get rid of All for One. And now, well, she just wanted to spend time with her brother. Izuku picked her up and hugged her, and both of them sat down to watch TV together. It was nice. They were just watching some old cartoons. Literally, and considering I watched a lot of this old cartoon back when I was young, they literally watched Tom and Jerry. Yes. If anybody's watched Tom and Jerry, you know how freaking hilarious they could be. Hell, I could literally turn on my PS5, go onto YouTube, and just laugh my ass off when I watch the old cartoons of Tom and Jerry. I would just be sitting there laughing because I just find them so funny. God, nobody does cartoons like that anymore. Ah, that just brings up too many good memories. You know, listen to my old ass talking about the old days. But anyway, they'd just be sitting there watching cartoons while Inko ran the cafe. And after the cartoons end, Zuko helps Izumi out with her homework, smiling, rubbing her head, pointing out things, and helping her with her maths, English, and everything in between. And Izuku was there when his father finally took off with his crew. Izuku shouldn't really do it because he's not part. Well, his dad's not part of the military, but he salutes the man. Hisashi does the same, with a big cheesy smile and says, "I'll be back in no time. You watch. I'll make you all proud." Izuku just rolls his eyes. His good old dad, trying to make everybody believe in him, even though he possibly doesn't believe in himself. Izuku smiles. He just says, "Good luck, Dad." The man takes off into the wider galaxy. The Alliance, well, the Alliance was just patrolling around its own borders and just waiting for the line of contact. Anyway, I hope you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.